What do you think gas chromatography is?
Gas chromatography.
Sounds like photography with
Yeah, it sounds like
gas.
photography with gas, something along those lines.
Yes. So Jackson, what is gas chromatography?
I have no idea.
I don't know. I would say that it's a form of gassing, like gassing people.
Maybe. GC, is that on the periodic table? GC?
Yeah, okay, that's good. Is
it on? Is it on
you
there?
guys are perfect. Thank you.
All right, cool. Thank you.
So what is gas chromatography?
Gas chromatography is a technique for analyzing a mixture of volatile substances in which the mixture is carried by an inert gas through a column packed with a selective absorbent, and a detector records on a moving strip the conductivity of the gas leaving the tube. Peaks on the resulting graph indicate the presence of a particular component.
How does gas chromatography work?
The process begins when the sample to be analyzed is pumped into a vaporization chamber where it is raised to a temperature of 50 degrees Celsius above the lowest boiling point. An inert gas is added in to help propel the compound along the coiled tube. The gas is propelled through the tube until it reaches the detector. The detector records the intensity of gas particles, which is then processed and displayed in a graph of intensity over time. By looking at the graph, we can tell certain properties of the material. The first peak represents the solvent, and the next two represent the compounds within the tested gas. If we look inside of the tube, we can see that it is lined with a liquid solvent as a stationary phase, as well as the two separate particles of the compounds that were inserted. You can see that the particles of the red compound are further back than those of the blue compound. Over time, the distance between the two increases. This is because of the differences in boiling points and mass. A smaller compound, or one with a lower boiling point, will travel more quickly because it is more affected by the inert gas pushing it along. If we look back at the graph, the third peak represents the larger, slower particle with a higher boiling point in the sample, as it reaches the detector later.
What are the risks and benefits?
Well, gas chromatography is very useful in determining properties of the compound. Its risk is that it cannot tell you what the compound is, which brings in a very high room for error because there's a lot of compounds out there. Right? This is why it's usually used in conjunction with things such as mass spectrometry and liquid chromatography tests in order to better determine the properties of the compound so that we can finally figure out what that mysterious compound is.
Where is gas chromatography used?
I'm with the Forensic Analysis Research Team of Mississauga. I'm a particle analyst and I use gas chromatography a lot in my everyday work. Well, gas chromatography really helps me to determine properties of a particle, which is really helpful in forensic science as to determining what type of particle might have been involved in a crime. Gas chromatography is also used in environmental science, so determining the type of toxic material in earth, air, or water samples, but it's mostly used in forensic sciences. Thank you.
In your mind, what is gas chromatography?
What does that mean?
What does it mean to you?
Gas, what?
Gas chromatography.
Are there any alternatives to gas chromatography? Viable alternatives to gas chromatography are liquid chromatography and mass spectrometry. However, they are usually used alongside each other to determine the majority of the properties of a compound.